It was a sound that woke me. Not a loud one, not the kind that makes you bolt upright, but a small, metallic thud, followed by a dragging sound beneath the floorboards. The kind of sound that doesn't belong in a quiet house at 2:13 a.m. At first, I thought it was the heater again. The pipes in our old place had a bad habit of clanging when the air kicked on. But then came the whisper of footsteps, slow, measured, and a door creaking shut. Our basement door. I froze. My husband, David, was supposed to be in Boston. He'd been gone nearly 3 weeks on a business trip, though the more he texted about late meetings and spotty hotel Wi-Fi, the less real the whole thing sounded. Now, half awake in the dark, I stared at the ceiling, counting heartbeats, waiting for logic to find me. But logic doesn't whisper from basements at night. Fear does. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake the kids down the hall. The air smelled faintly of rain and detergent. I'd done laundry earlier, but under that, something else lingered. A trace of perfume I didn't own. The hallway light spilled across the stairs in a pale strip. The basement door was closed, but a sliver of yellow glowed underneath. Someone was down there. My hand trembled as I gripped the knob. "Hello," I called softly. Silence. Then a voice, low, female, calm. "Just a minute." The words didn't make sense. Just a minute. I stepped back. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that voice. Not well, but enough to feel my stomach twist. When the door opened, she stood there blinking against the light. Rebecca. My husband's best friend's wife. She wore one of David's shirts, wrinkled, oversized, and in her hand was a mug from our kitchen. "I didn't mean to scare you," she said, as if she'd simply borrowed sugar. "I was making tea." That's where it began, the part of my life I still replay like a film that refuses to end. But to understand that moment, to understand how I found my husband's best friend's wife living in my basement, you'd have to know what life was like before the cracks appeared. Before Boston, before the basement, there was a kind of ordinary happiness. We'd lived in a quiet suburb outside Portland for 9 years, me, David, and our 2 kids, Owen, 12, and Lily, 8. The kind of neighborhood where everyone waves while jogging and the air smells faintly of cedar after rain. I worked part-time as a physical therapist at the community clinic. David ran IT for a logistics company, the kind of job that made him indispensable but endlessly tired. He used to joke that I ran our house like a ship, steady, predictable, humming. Maybe I did. I liked order. Dinner at 6, homework by 7, the hum of the dishwasher marking the rhythm of our evenings. It's strange, the things you miss once chaos moves in, like the sound of cutlery being put away, or the way he used to squeeze my shoulder when passing behind me at the counter. Rebecca and her husband, Luke, had been part of our circle for years. Luke and David met in college. Rebecca was the kind of woman who seemed allergic to silence, always talking, always smiling a little too brightly. She worked in real estate, and if you'd asked me back then, I'd have said we were friends. Not close, but friendly. Our kids had sleepovers. We exchanged Christmas cards. Nothing ever seemed off. Until David's company landed a big contract in Boston. "It's just a few weeks," he'd said one night, folding shirts into a suitcase. "I'll be back before you know it." "You've never been gone that long," I said. He smiled. "That's how you know I'm overdue." We laughed. I kissed him goodbye at the airport. And then the texts began, short, mechanical check-ins. "Long day, heading to bed. Big meeting tomorrow, wish me luck." No FaceTimes. No late-night calls. Just silence broken by polite updates. By week 2, I told myself not to be paranoid. He'd always been steady, not the type to wander or lie. But small things piled up, his credit card bill showing local charges, an unreturned call from his office, a wrong number text that mentioned our place. Then that night, the sound in the basement turned doubt into proof. Standing there at the top of the stairs, I stared at Rebecca like my brain had detached from my body. She set down her mug. "I should explain." "Yes," I said. "You should." She brushed her hair behind her ear. David told me you'd be away this weekend. What? He said you were visiting your sister. I don't have a sister, I said. She blinked, frowning. Then that's strange. Understatement of the century. I looked past her. A duffel bag sat by the wall. My husband's duffel bag. Laundry folded neatly on a shelf. 2 toothbrushes in the downstairs bathroom. How long have you been here? I asked. A few weeks. Weeks. And David? Her voice softened. He comes and goes. I felt something inside me fracture, not a break, but a hairline crack you can't see until light hits it. She followed me upstairs, barefoot, calm. I didn't mean to intrude, she said. It's just, this is complicated. Complicated? I whispered. You're living in my house. She looked genuinely hurt. You really don't know? Know what? That we're married. For a second, I thought I misheard her. Married. The word hung there, absurd and heavy, like smoke you can't clear. She took a slow breath. David and we've been married for months. He said you and he separated quietly. He didn't want to upset the kids. I laughed then, sharp, hollow, almost hysterical. You think I'd be sleeping in that bed, making him lunches, paying the mortgage if we were separated? She frowned, confusion shading to pity. He told me you had trouble letting go. That's when my knees gave out. I sat at the kitchen table, hands trembling. Rebecca stood in my kitchen, wearing my husband's shirt, calling me delusional. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just whispered, "Get out." She didn't move. Laura. My name, I said quietly, is Emma. Her mouth opened slightly. He said your name was Laura. And that was the moment I realized the scale of the lie. David hadn't just cheated. He'd built a whole other story, a new version of me, stripped of my name, my life, my home, all for her. When she finally left, I locked the door and sank to the floor, shaking. The smell of her tea still lingered, mint, sweet, and nauseating. I sat there until dawn, waiting for the sound of his key in the door. It never came. But his phone did buzz at 7:12 a.m. David, flight delayed again. Back Sunday. Sunday. He had no idea I'd met his other wife. I stared at the message until my fingers went numb. Then I typed back. Can't wait to see you. That was the moment I stopped being the woman things happened to. From that morning on, I became the woman who watched, listened, and planned. Because before I confronted him, I needed proof. And the truth, the kind that hides in paperwork and bank records and whispered phone calls, was waiting right beneath my feet. When you've been married nearly 15 years, you learn to tell the difference between a small lie and a big one. A small lie sounds like, "I forgot to take out the trash." A big one sounds like silence, the kind that hums, deliberate and steady, beneath every word. After that night in the basement, I moved through my house like a stranger. Everything looked the same, the breakfast dishes, the half-folded laundry on the couch, Lily's shoes by the door, yet nothing felt right. The space itself seemed changed, like every corner was holding its breath. I made the kids' lunches, smiled when Owen joked, nodded when Lily asked for new markers, but my mind was a spinning wheel. Was Rebecca gone for good? Was she hiding somewhere else? How many nights had she lived under my roof while I slept above her? When they left for school, I stood alone in the kitchen. The morning light slanted through the blinds, catching the tiny dust motes in the air. They drifted lazily, free, unaware. I envied them. I started with the basement. The smell hit first, faint detergent, coffee, and something floral. Her perfume. The laundry shelf was organized neatly, more neatly than I ever kept it. Fresh folded towels. On the wall, a jacket, David's. And next to it, a pair of shoes I didn't recognize. The bed in the corner was made perfectly, the sheets crisp and tucked tight. A woman's sweater lay draped over the chair. She'd built a life down there. A hidden one. And tucked under the pillow, I found an envelope. Inside, Photographs. Rebecca and David at a restaurant. At the lake cabin we used to rent every summer. At a courthouse, smiling. I couldn't breathe. My hand went cold, my pulse loud in my ears. The date on the back of one photo, June 14th. He'd told me he was in Chicago that week for training. Instead, he'd been marrying another man's wife. I put everything back exactly as I found it. I didn't want him to know I knew, not yet. I needed to understand how deep this went. How long he'd been lying, how much of my life had been rewritten without me. That night, I told the kids Daddy's flight was delayed again. They barely reacted anymore, it had become routine. Owen shrugged, muttering something about workaholics. Lily drew a heart on a piece of paper and said, "I'll put it on Daddy's pillow so he won't forget us." It nearly broke me. When the house was quiet again, I sat at the kitchen table and opened David's laptop. He never used a password with me. He did now. It wasn't hard to guess, Rebecca 79. I stared at the screen, the name glowing in blue, as if mocking me. Once inside, I opened his email. Most of the recent ones were from her. Subject lines like groceries, basement key, our routine. There was one that stopped me cold. Are we telling her soon? I clicked it. David. This isn't sustainable. I can't keep pretending to be a tenant or guest. You promised we'd make it official once the kids adjusted. I don't like lying to them. Please don't make me the villain in her story. Ah. I sat back, my pulse pounding. Villain in her story. That line stuck in my head for days. I wondered if she thought she was the hero. When David finally called that weekend, his voice was smooth, practiced. "Hey, sorry, still in Boston. Weather's insane." "Really?" I said softly, looking out the window at our driveway. His car was parked there. The silence that followed told me everything. He didn't know I knew. And I wasn't about to ruin that. "Kids miss you," I said. "Come home soon." "I will," he promised. "Next Sunday." "Next Sunday," I repeated, writing it down like evidence. Because Sunday would be the day I stopped pretending. The week that followed was a blur of calculation. I made copies of everything, the photos, the emails, even the mortgage documents. I went to the bank, printed statements, and found a new joint account opened 3 months earlier under both their names. 3 months. That was when Rebecca had started helping him with a side project. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, legal, intentional. I couldn't tell anyone yet. Not my best friend, not my mother, not even Luke, her real husband. Because Luke was a good man. Quiet. Kind. The kind who brought soup when you were sick. I couldn't hand him this kind of pain without proof. So I waited. And while I waited, I watched. On Thursday night, I saw it again, the basement light. Rebecca was back. She moved quietly, as if she belonged there, which in her mind, maybe she did. I watched from the top of the stairs, hidden by the dark. She set her phone on the counter, humming softly, wearing one of David's sweatshirts. She looked content. Domestic. A woman at home. Something inside me hardened. No tears. No shaking. Just a slow, cold anger that settled deep in my bones. I stepped down one stair, it creaked. She turned, startled. "Oh," she said, smiling awkwardly. "Emma. You're still here." "Still?" I said evenly. She blinked, realizing her mistake. "I just meant." I cut her off. "Does he know you're here?" Her lips parted. "He told me to wait." I stared at her. "Then you'll wait somewhere else." I didn't shout. I didn't touch her. But there must have been something in my face, something that told her I wasn't bluffing. She left without arguing, clutching her phone and muttering something about misunderstanding. But before she went, she said one thing that chilled me. "Don't be too angry with him. He didn't mean to hurt you." That night, I barely slept. The house was too quiet, the air too heavy. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, calm and almost sorrowful. As if she were the one being betrayed. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I called Luke. "Hey," he said cheerfully. "Emma, everything okay? Can we meet?" I asked. "It's about Rebecca. And David." His tone shifted instantly. "What happened?" I hesitated. "Not over the phone." There was a long pause. "Okay. My place. Tonight." By evening, the sky had turned the color of bruises, deep purple fading to gray. I drove to Luke's house, gripping the wheel too tightly. My hands felt foreign. My pulse beat in my throat. When he opened the door, I almost lost my nerve. He looked tired, like a man who'd been waiting for bad news. I didn't know how to start, so I handed him the envelope. "Just look," I said. He opened it slowly, brows furrowing. When he saw the photos, his jaw tightened. "Is this a joke?" "No." He stared at the last picture, the courthouse one, and his face went pale. "That's her necklace. I gave it to her." I nodded. "They said they were married." His eyes filled with disbelief. "David. He's my best friend." "I know." He sank into a chair, silent. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, the only sound between us. Finally, he whispered, "How long?" "Months. Maybe longer." He rubbed his face, shaking his head. I thought she was helping him with business stuff. "I didn't." He stopped, breathing hard. "Does he know you know?" "Not yet." He looked up then, meeting my eyes. "Then let's make sure he does." We spent the next hour going through everything, timelines, transactions, messages. Luke was steady, deliberate. When I faltered, he filled in the blanks. And by the time I left, we had a plan. David would come home Sunday. And on Sunday, he'd find both of us waiting. Sunday morning came bright and cold. The house looked deceptively peaceful. The kids were at my sister-in-law's, the coffee pot still warm. At 9:12 a.m., I heard the car pull into the driveway. The front door opened. He stepped inside, suitcase in hand, phone to his ear, voice light. "Yeah, babe, I'm home." He froze when he saw me. And when Luke stepped out of the kitchen behind me, his face drained of color. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the distant hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the hallway clock. Then David whispered, "Emma, what is this?" I looked him straight in the eye. "It's the day you stop lying." He set his suitcase down slowly, as though any sudden movement might make the truth explode across the room. Luke stood behind me, shoulders squared, jaw clenched tight, his silence louder than shouting. David tried a laugh, the nervous kind he used at work when he forgot someone's name. "Okay," he said, raising both hands slightly. Let's not be dramatic." "What's going on?" I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply slid the envelope across the counter, the one filled with photographs and printouts. His eyes flicked down, then up again, cautious. "Open it," I said. He hesitated, then tipped the contents out onto the granite. The courthouse picture slid into view first, then the one at the lake cabin. His hand hovered over them, trembling. "Where did you get these?" "From your basement tenant," I said quietly. Color drained from his face. "Emma." Luke cut in, voice low and steady. "She's my wife, David." "My wife." David's eyes darted between us, like he was trying to find a door that didn't exist. "Luke, listen. It's not what it looks like." "Then what is it?" Luke snapped. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been living two lives and dragging both of our families into it." David rubbed his temples, shaking his head. "You don't understand. She needed help." "Help?" I said. "Is that what you call living in my basement and calling herself your wife?" His eyes flicked toward me, pleading now. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. It got out of control." I folded my arms. "Out of control? Or exactly under your control?" He looked smaller somehow, not the man who fixed leaky faucets and read bedtime stories, but someone hollowed out by his own deceit. She said you two were married, I said. Was she lying too? He swallowed hard. We had a ceremony. It wasn't legal. She was falling apart after she and Luke split. Split? Luke cut in. We never split. I moved out for a month after her affair. I was trying to figure out if I could forgive her. And I guess now I know who the affair was with. David looked like he might collapse. Luke, please. Don't, Luke snapped. You looked me in the eye at Owen's birthday party and asked about my marriage. You gave me advice. His voice cracked. You told me to keep trying. David's hands shook as he picked up one of the photos, staring at it like maybe it would rewrite itself. It was supposed to be temporary. She needed somewhere safe. You were angry with her, and Emma, he hesitated, looking at me. You were so distant. Distant, I repeated, tasting the word like poison. You mean faithful. I was faithful, David. There's a difference. He flinched. I took a deep breath. How long has she been here? He hesitated, then whispered, since March. It was October. 7 months. 7 months she'd been living below my feet while I made dinner, folded laundry, tucked our children into bed. 7 months of lies layered like sediment until they became our foundation. Luke stepped closer, voice low and deadly calm. You used my grief as a cover story. You said you were helping her with the mortgage papers. I was, David said, almost pleading. At first. And then, we got close. Close, Luke repeated. You married her. It wasn't real, David shouted, the first spark of anger breaking through his shame. It was a mistake. A stupid, emotional mistake. She said she needed stability. She said she'd end it with Luke. I didn't. You didn't mean to get caught, I said. He stopped talking. The quiet that followed was a living thing, thick and suffocating. The kind that fills every corner and forces truth out through the cracks. Luke turned away, running a hand through his hair. I need to leave before I do something I'll regret. Luke, I started, but he shook his head. Don't apologize for him, he said softly. You're the only person in this room who didn't deserve this. He turned to David. You and she can explain this mess to my lawyer. He walked out, the door slamming behind him, leaving the air buzzing with everything unsaid. David sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I watched him for a long time, the man I'd built a life with, reduced to someone I barely recognized. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red. I never wanted to hurt you. I laughed bitterly. Then why did you? He opened his mouth, closed it again. No words. Just the sound of his breathing, ragged and shallow. I poured myself a glass of water, my hand steady now. You lied to her, to him, to me. And for what? So you could feel needed. She made me feel alive, he said quietly. After all these years of routine, she reminded me who I was. Then maybe you should have looked harder at who you already were, I said. Because I don't recognize that man anymore. He stayed silent while I packed a small overnight bag. I wasn't running, not yet. But I needed air, distance, a place where his lies couldn't cling to the walls. As I passed him, he reached out, grabbing my wrist gently. Emma, please. Don't go. Let me explain everything. I pulled free. You've been explaining everything to someone else for months. I'm tired of being the last to know my own story. I walked out, the morning sun too bright, the air sharp with the promise of rain. I drove aimlessly for hours, the roads blurring past like a reel of someone else's life. I ended up at the coast, the same stretch of beach where we used to take the kids. The tide was low, the sand cold beneath my shoes. I sat on a driftwood log and let the wind whip my hair, the salt stinging my cheeks. Somewhere in that noise of waves and wind, the pain started to shift from disbelief to something quieter. Clarity, maybe. Because underneath the betrayal, underneath the shock, I felt something I hadn't in months, control. He'd built a story that erased me. Now I'd write one that didn't include him. When I finally went home that night, the house was dark. His suitcase was gone. So were his clothes, his shoes, even his toothbrush. But the basement door was open. I went down, the air still carrying that faint floral perfume. On the mattress lay a single folded note. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way. He told me you'd moved on. I guess we were both lied to. Rebecca." I read it twice, then folded it neatly and placed it back on the bed. For the first time, I didn't feel angry at her. Not pity, either, just a strange, tired understanding. We were both living in a house built out of his lies. She just got the basement. The next morning, I told the kids their father was staying elsewhere for work. Owen frowned. "For how long?" "I don't know," I said honestly. Lily just looked up at me with her wide, solemn eyes. "You're not mad, are you, Mommy?" I knelt down, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Mad?" I whispered. "No, baby. I'm just done." That week, I met with a lawyer. I opened a separate bank account, changed the locks, and filed for separation. The paperwork felt heavy but clean, like a bandage finally being peeled off. When the lawyer asked if I wanted to list infidelity as the reason, I said yes. Then I added, "and impersonation." She raised an eyebrow, but didn't ask. A few days later, Luke stopped by. He looked exhausted, like someone who'd spent nights replaying everything. He handed me an envelope, Rebecca's handwriting on the front. "I found it in her things," he said. "Thought you should have it." Inside were receipts, letters, and one more photo. This one wasn't romantic, just them standing awkwardly by a courthouse clerk's desk. "Did she ever tell you why she did it?" I asked. He shook his head. "She said she thought it would make her feel safe. That he promised her a future." I nodded slowly. We all believed his promises. Luke sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You know, for years I envied your marriage. You two seemed solid." I smiled sadly. That's the thing about solid. You don't notice the cracks until the foundation shifts. When he left, I sat with the envelope on my lap. I thought about the basement, the strange duality of it. A place meant for storage, for what you hide away, yet it had held the truth all along. The house felt lighter now, even in its emptiness. Every creak of the floorboards was honest again. Weeks passed. I told the kids the truth gently, piece by piece. Owen took it with quiet anger, Lily cried for a night, then started drawing pictures of Mommy and the kids' house. I started sleeping through the night again. Not well, but enough. Sometimes, when the wind rattles the windows, I still think I hear a sound from the basement, a thud, a whisper, an echo. But it's never anyone there. Just ghosts of the life I buried. And maybe that's how healing begins, not with forgetting, but with learning to live above the wreckage without fear it'll rise again. The thing about truth is that it doesn't stay buried. It seeps through words, through whispers, through the quiet spaces people think are safe. By the end of that month, the truth about David and Rebecca was no longer a secret. It began, I think, at the grocery store. I had gone to pick up milk and a few things for dinner. I remember the sound of the refrigerator hum, the smell of coffee brewing at the in-store cafe, the chatter of two women by the produce section. They were laughing softly, in that way people do when the story isn't theirs to tell. And she found her husband's best friend's wife living in her basement, one whispered. The other gasped. "You're joking." Not a word of it. My cousin works with the woman at the clinic. Apparently, she caught them both red-handed. Their words hung in the air like smoke. When I turned the corner, one of them saw me, recognition flashing across her face, and her smile died in her throat. "Emma," she murmured. "I'm so sorry, we weren't." "It's fine," I said quietly, taking my basket. "Really." And for once, I meant it. Because that was the strange mercy of it, I no longer had to explain. The town was doing that for me. Over the next few weeks, The story spread the way stories always do, twisted, retold, reshaped until it sounded like myth. Some said Rebecca had been blackmailing him. Others said they'd been planning to run away together. I didn't correct any of it. I was done managing his reputation. He'd already done enough to destroy mine. When the school board called, David had volunteered with the PTA and coached Owen's soccer team. They wanted to discuss the situation. I told them the truth in one sentence. My husband is not the man you thought he was. They didn't need more. Meanwhile, Luke's lawyer filed for divorce. Rebecca left town before the papers even landed. Her sister told me she'd gone to California, a fresh start. I wished her peace, even if she'd stolen mine for a while. David, though, he stayed local. He rented an apartment downtown. He called, texted, emailed endless apologies, explanations, half confessions dressed as clarity. I made a mistake. It was never real. I need my family back. At first, I ignored him. Then one evening, after the kids went to bed, I picked up. His voice came through soft, exhausted. Thank you for answering. Please don't hang up. I wasn't going to, I said. I just don't know what you expect me to say. I want to talk. To see you. The kids. They're fine, I said. They have stability. That's what they need. And what about us? There is no us. He sighed, the kind of sigh that used to make me soften. But not this time. Can't we at least try to fix it? David, I said gently, you didn't just break a promise. You broke reality. You made two women live the same life, and neither of us consented to it. There's no fixing that. There was a long pause. Then he said, almost in a whisper, I hate myself for what I did. Then start there, I said. Hate it enough to never do it again. And I hung up. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't triumph. It was just quiet. And sometimes quiet feels like justice. The next few months were a strange kind of freedom. Painful, yes, but clean. I went back to work full-time. The clinic became my sanctuary, a place where healing wasn't metaphorical. Helping others heal made me believe it was still possible for me too. The women I worked with became a lifeline. They didn't ask for details. They just made space. Brought me coffee. Let me sit in silence when I needed to. It was the kind of kindness that didn't demand a story in return. Then one morning, Ruth from the clinic, older, brassy, unfiltered, placed a folded newspaper on my desk. Front page of the local section, community coach resigns amid personal scandal. David's face, smaller than it used to look, stared out from the photo. Ruth frowned. You see this mess? I nodded. I do. You okay? I will be. She gave me a long look, then smiled. Good. Because you don't look broken. You look done. The article mentioned allegations of inappropriate relationships and misuse of personal funds. Apparently, one of his company accounts had tied into the secret joint account he'd opened with Rebecca. It wasn't my doing. But it did mean the consequences had finally arrived. He wasn't fired, but he was put on leave. And for a man whose identity was built on being the dependable one, the husband, the friend, the steady professional, the silence that followed must have been unbearable. 2 weeks later, he showed up at the clinic. I saw him through the window first, standing awkwardly by the front desk, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. My favorite flowers. Or at least, they used to be. When he saw me, he straightened his tie, as if tidiness could fix what was broken. Emma, he said softly, can we talk? Every nurse at the desk froze. You could have heard a pin drop. Outside, I said. We stood by the parking lot, the sun low and gold across the pavement. He looked thinner, older, like someone who'd been living in regret. But I didn't mistake guilt for growth. They're not the same thing. I wanted to apologize in person, he said. You didn't deserve any of it. I nodded. You're right. I didn't. He looked down, clutching the flowers. I miss you. I miss the kids. I miss our life. You miss what you destroyed, I said gently. That's not the same as missing me. His eyes filled with tears. I know. But I can't undo it. No, I said. You can only live with it. I didn't take the flowers. He didn't offer them again. He just stood there as I turned and walked back inside, leaving him alone in the glow of a sunset that didn't belong to us anymore. That night, I sat with Owen on the porch, watching him scroll through his phone. He didn't talk about his father much. But that evening, he said quietly, "Mom? Yeah. Do you think people can change?" I thought for a long moment. I think they can, I said. But not always enough to come home again. He nodded slowly. I just don't want to hate him. You don't have to, I said. You just have to remember what he did. He leaned his head on my shoulder. You're stronger than he is. I smiled faintly. I had to be. A month later, I found an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single photo, the courthouse picture again. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, were the words. He finally told me everything. I'm sorry. Ah. I tore it in half and threw it away. Because her apology wasn't for me. It was for herself. That spring, the kids and I moved into a smaller house, not out of necessity, but choice. Fresh walls. No basement. Every room open to sunlight. The first night there, as I unpacked boxes, I found one of Lily's drawings taped to my bedroom door. 2 stick figures, her and me, holding hands under a bright yellow sun. She'd written, "Our home now." And for the first time in almost a year, I cried without bitterness. I still see David sometimes. School events, birthdays, those unavoidable intersections of shared history. He looks haunted, polite, quiet, aging faster than time can explain. We don't speak beyond logistics. He always stands a few feet away, as though afraid his presence might crack the calm I've built. And maybe it would. But life moved on. People stopped whispering. The story faded, replaced by new gossip, new faces. And yet, every now and then, I'll catch someone's glance, a mix of pity and awe, and I can almost hear what they're thinking. That's her. The one who found the other woman living in her basement. They mean it as tragedy. But I've learned to hear it as testimony. Because I survived it. I named it. I walked out of it. And that's something worth being known for. They say healing isn't a straight line, it's a slow, uneven walk through memories you'd rather not revisit. For me, that walk began in the spring. By then, the grass in our new backyard had started to grow in uneven patches. I'd spend early mornings out there, trimming the edges, listening to the hum of the neighborhood waking up, dogs barking, a distant lawnmower, a child's laugh floating through the air. Ordinary sounds. Healing sounds. For the first time in months, I liked the quiet. I didn't listen for footsteps in the basement or keys turning in the door. There was no tension threaded through my mornings, no waiting for the next lie to fall apart. It was just me, the kids, and the soft rhythm of a life that finally made sense again. In those early weeks, I avoided mirrors. Not because I hated what I saw, but because I didn't recognize her. The woman staring back wasn't broken, but she wasn't who she'd been either. The Emma before Betrayal was careful, the kind of woman who triple-checked the locks and double-checked her husband's flights. The Emma after Betrayal didn't check much at all. She just lived. There was something freeing about that. Every evening, I'd cook with the kids simple meals. Pasta, roasted vegetables, grilled cheese when we were tired. We'd talk about school, about Owen's soccer, about Lily's art projects. They healed differently. Owen grew quiet but steady, observant, protective. Lily asked questions. Big ones. Why do grown-ups lie, Mommy? Do you still love Daddy? Will he come back? Each time, I answered honestly. Sometimes grown-ups lie because they're afraid to tell the truth. I'll always care about him, but love changes. And no, sweetheart. He won't come back, not the way he was. And she'd nod, processing it with the kind of resilience children are born knowing. Summer came, soft and green. I took a few weeks off work. We drove to the coast, the same place where I'd gone alone the night I left him. Only this time, I wasn't running. I was returning. We built sandcastles. We ate ice cream that melted faster than we could finish it. At one point, I sat watching them chase the waves and thought, I'm still here. Not just surviving. Living. A few months later, I got a letter from Luke. Emma. I hope you and the kids are doing well. I wanted you to know I finalized the divorce. Rebecca's moved to Sacramento. She's trying to start over. I'm focusing on my kids, my work, and the small joys I forgot existed. You were right, truth doesn't destroy. It just clears the debris so something better can grow. Take care of yourself. You deserve peace. Luke. I read it twice, smiled, and tucked it into my nightstand. Not because I needed a reminder of what had happened, but because it was proof that survival wasn't just mine. We'd both made it through the same storm, and somehow, found sunlight on the other side. By fall, David and I were officially divorced. We met at the courthouse one last time, just the two of us and the faint echo of everything we'd lost. He looked older, grayer, but quieter too, like a man who'd finally run out of stories to tell. When the judge stamped the final papers, he turned to me. You look happy, he said softly. I am, I replied. He nodded. You were always stronger than I thought. I was always stronger than you knew, I said. We left it there. That evening, I sat alone in the living room, the divorce decree folded neatly beside me. The house was warm, soft yellow light spilling from the lamp, the faint smell of apple pie from Lily's attempt at baking earlier. I thought about the word freedom. How it doesn't always feel like celebration, sometimes it feels like exile. Like peace you didn't realize you'd been missing. That night, I slept without dreams. The months that followed were quiet. I joined a book club. Started painting again. Went on walks in the rain without an umbrella just to feel something unfiltered. And one afternoon, I found myself in the same cafe where David and I used to go years ago. I ordered coffee, sat by the window, and opened my journal, something I'd started keeping after therapy. On the first page, I'd written 3 sentences in thick, black ink. What people break, time cannot always fix. But time can teach you how to build again. And sometimes the second foundation is stronger. A few weeks later, a friend from the clinic introduced me to someone, a writer named Marcus, who came in for physical therapy after a cycling accident. He was quiet, kind, and asked thoughtful questions that didn't make me flinch. We started talking not about love or loss, but about small, ordinary things. Books, coffee, favorite beaches, the way morning light hits windows differently in autumn. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. But it was honest. And that honesty felt like the rarest thing in the world. On the 1-year mark of the day I found Rebecca in my basement, I lit a candle. Not to mourn, but to mark the end. I placed it on the windowsill, watching the flame flicker in the dark. It danced, small and steady, the way healing does, not loud, not sudden, just persistent. I whispered a quiet thank you to the silence, to the pain, even to the woman who had once taken up space in my home. Because without her, I might still be living in a house where peace was a guest and pretense was the host. That night, I tucked the kids into bed. Lily whispered, "Mommy, do you think we're happy now?" I smiled. "I think we're peaceful. And that's better." She nodded, satisfied, and drifted to sleep. I sat by her window for a while, the moonlight soft on her face, the sound of crickets outside. In that stillness, I understood something simple but profound. Happiness isn't loud. It's the quiet you fight to reclaim, the kind that no longer feels like loneliness. 1 year later the house smells like cinnamon and new beginnings. I'm standing in the kitchen, apron dusted with flour, listening to Owen's laughter from the living room. Lily's coloring at the table. The dog, yes, we finally got one, is curled by the heater. There's no ghost of betrayal here. No hidden door or secret life humming beneath the floorboards. Just the sound of home. I look around and realize I'm smiling not because I'm pretending, but because I don't have to pretend anymore.